Bah, chicka, wow, wow. Circular saw, circular saw, circular saw. Something. All right, it has been a wild week. We know lots of stuff with the circular saw this week. Had lots of fun doing simple jigs for it. I'll post links in the description box below if you're interested in doing more with your circular saw. Yesterday I did a video using this makeshift table saw of sorts. Well, it's basically a circular saw screwed to a piece of plywood with the blade protruding through. But I made some trim with it, and I did some base molding, and then I did this fluted trim, and I had a number of people comment on that video about the fluted trim. So without having a lot of time to do videos today, I thought what I would do, everyone's gone home, so let me show you guys how I would set this up, or show everybody how I would set this up, how easy it is to set up. We'll talk about a couple of key points, and those would be, how we decide the thickness or width of our flute, and how to lay that out center, and we'll do that real quick just so it makes it real easy for anybody out there who wants to give it a shot. Bah, chicka, wow, wow. All right, the first trick is going to be setting up the cove, the size of the cove, or the width of the cove here. And in order to do that, what I've done is first I've laid out where the blade starts to protrude through the plywood and where the blade dies into the plywood, and everything else between here is sticking above it. So I want a half-inch cove, so what I'm going to do is on this side, this is going to be the finished side where the blade cuts, I'm going to put it right up against the plywood. Now, on this side, I'm going to measure from the opposite side of the blade over, because that is actually the finished side. So if I want a half-inch cove, what I'll do is I'll measure over from that side of the blade a half-inch. Make sure I'm on my mark here. There it is. Okay, right there actually. Yep. Okay, and then I'm just going to put a pencil line, and that's going to mark the angle that I want to cut. The second thing I need to do is find my center point and my high point, which is right here. So I have a piece of wood here that I'm going to cut. This is sinker pine. It doesn't look like pine because it's been underwater for about 100 years or better. But I've got the width I need now. I know my center is right here, which is 1 1/4 inches. So from this center point here, I'm going to measure away at that angle 1 1/4 inches, which happens to be right here on this green line, if you can see that. So to get that measurement, what I would do is just simply measure from my line over to the 1 1/4 inches mark, and that is, let me get the right side here, and that is 1 1/2 roughly. So I would just come down here, mark 1 1/2 from this line over, and I would come down here, mark 1 1/2 from this line over, and that's going to give me my center point. So I've already got the line marked. You probably can't see it because it's in light green. Let me put a line there. So then what I'll do is I'll put my first guide in here. I'll just run it up with that line, and then run a couple screws in it real quick. And now for the other side, I'm just going to put a piece on here like that in between the piece that I'm going to use, or that I'm going to cut, and that's just going to give me my width. And I'll take another straight edge and then on the other side. And what's really cool about having a plywood top like this is that you can just screw right to it. Bah, chicka, wow, wow. Okay, now that I've got my first cove cut, what I want to do is measure over for the next one, and I've got looks like it's just under an inch from this cove here, or from the side of the cove over here. So I want to split that difference. We'll go a 1/2 inch. And then I want to move this whole thing over so this is centered on the middle of that blade. So what I need to do is measure from the center of that cove to the next one. Get it on the right side of the measurement here. And it's 3/4 of an inch. It's basically just move the whole thing over 3/4 of an inch. So I've drawn a line here all the way down my guide. All right, because it's 3/4 of an inch, to make it easy on myself, I'm just going to unscrew this. Whoop. And then I'm going to use a 3/4 inch spacer, put it back on that line that I drew earlier, and then fasten this back down. And then after that's done, basically, I'm just going to put the piece back in here, and then move my other guide over. Okay, now because both sides are the same distance, all I have to do now is flip the piece around and run it through again, and it'll be done. So another quick tip is when you're pushing the piece through the blade, especially when it's like a thin kerf blade like I'm using, you want to keep an even constant speed, a constant pressure on that blade so the angular pressure that's on the blade stays constant, because when you stop or when you change your speed, the angle of the blade changes slightly, and it makes, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, it's barely worth mentioning, it'll sand right out, but it does make a difference in the overall appearance and work that you have left when you're done. So to sand it out, I just got a simple little block of wood, soft wood I prefer, and then I just round it off the edges and put a piece of sticky, 6-inch sticky sanding paper to it, and to sand out my grooves. And it makes really short work of sanding those flutes out. I always get a kick out of seeing that and knowing that it was done on the skill saw or circular saw. Wow. So there you have it, fluted, cutting flutes on the skill saw. I keep saying that. Circular saw. I grew up where we called a combination a tri-square, and a circular saw was a skill saw, so it's hard to get out of that habit. But, use your imaginations. The circular saw can be used for lots of things, and not just fluted trim, try combinations of different patterns and see what you come up with. You might surprise yourself. Thanks for watching, everyone.